Welcome back to Hobby Universe Outdoors. I'm Len. Today I'm going to be talking about this Harbor Freight Predator 3500 generator inverter. I've had this unit for about 5 years, so as I work through this, I'll be able to give you an honest review on what my experience has been using this so far. I'm going to change the oil real quick. That's not going to take long at all. I do want to share that process with you. And I'm also going to talk about the difference between an inverter generator as opposed to just a regular straight up generator. What's the difference, and is there an advantage or a disadvantage to having the inverter style generator? In just a minute, I'm going to go over this control panel and some of the different things you're going to find on the front here. Before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a generator and a generator inverter, this being the generator inverter style. The primary difference is going to be the quality and predictability of the power that's going to come out of the unit. A standard generator, you fire it up, it's going to create that 120 volts AC. It'll run your saw, your drill, some lights, a pump, whatever you got, you're going to be fine. Generator inverter will do exactly the same thing. It will create that power and it'll run all of the above, no issues. Where this is different is that it's going to create a much more cleaner, predictable power source. And what I mean is there will be no fluctuations or minimal fluctuations in the power coming out of the unit. The way it's able to do that is it creates that 120 volts AC, the same as a generator, but then it converts it to DC voltage, then it inverts it back to AC. During that process, it smooths out that power band, that wave, and it's a much cleaner, smoother, predictable source of power. Where that's going to be important is if you're running a television set, maybe you've got your laptop plugged in or you're charging a phone, any sort of electronic equipment that could be susceptible to damage from a power surge is going to be safer to power from an inverter style generator. The main reason I selected an inverter generator was for the reason I talked about just a second ago, and that was for the predictability and the cleanliness of the power. We have a camper, we drag it out into the woods occasionally, or we go to a campground, and maybe there's not electricity available where we're at to plug into. That's where this comes in handy. We can run the refrigerator from this, the microwave, maybe we get rained out on a day, so we end up being stuck inside. Now we can fire up the TV and the DVD player and watch some movies or whatever. It just gives us a lot of really great options in a nice compact size. That was the primary reason we bought it. Now, with that being said, that turns out not to be the biggest benefit to having it. We get power outages occasionally where we're out in the country a little bit, and when the power goes out, this will allow us to run the refrigerator in our home, power up a lamp, and we've even fired up the Wi-Fi and had the Wi-Fi running. That's assuming the cable internet is still functioning, but you know, to get power to the modem, you have to have 120 volts AC. We've done all of that with the inverter. I would not be comfortable running all of those things off a standard generator, again, because of the power fluctuations. So, you know, the modem, the Wi-Fi, the router, all that stuff, I'd be a little bit nervous to plug into that. And also the television if we wanted to plug in. So again, the inverter was a much better option for us. Before I get into the control panel, I wanted to talk real quick about the starter battery. Now the starter battery is going to be located behind this door in the compartment behind here. And when you get the unit, the battery is actually already going to be inside that compartment, but it's not going to be wired. They've got a sticker down here that tells you need to hook up the battery. That's true. So you pull this cover off, you hook up the battery, put it back in, put the cover back on, and now you should be ready to use the electric start. If when you get the unit the battery's not charged, mine was, so it wasn't an issue, but if for some reason your battery's not charged or it doesn't have enough juice in it to use the electric starter, that's okay. You can use the pull cord to start the generator, and as it runs, it will charge that battery, so it'll be ready for you next time. This is the control panel on the front of the machine. You have your run and start selector knob. We'll go over that in just a few minutes when I talk about starting procedure. You have the electric starter switch. Also have the ESC throttle control switch on or off. This is what I believe is the engine speed control, is what the ESC stands for. I'm going to talk about that in more detail a little bit later in the video. DC 12 volt outlet, two AC 120 volt outlets, as well as an AC 120 volt outlet that has a twist style lock. One other item that I appreciate is this LCD screen. This will tell you if you're low on oil, if you've overloaded the machine, what your output voltage is, and it'll also display the hours that the machine has run. And that's going to help you when it comes time to keeping track of maintenance, scheduled maintenance, and things like that. The startup procedure for these is pretty straightforward. You want to make sure the ESC switch is in the off position. Rotate this knob to the start position, and then normally you would just hit the starter button to get it to engage the engine and fire it up. I'm going to be starting it today using the pull cord, and the reason is before I started recording the video I kind of did a test run because I don't use the starter hardly ever, and when I tried, if you listen, you can hear the starter spinning, but it's not engaging the engine, and that's because the battery doesn't have enough juice to be able to pull it off. I'm not really that concerned about it. I almost always use the pull cord to start it anyway. This unit's about 4 to 5 years old. That is the original battery, so it's likely just the battery's old and needs to be replaced, and I could do that for not a lot of money, I'm sure. I don't even think I'm going to bother, to be honest, because I almost always use the pull cord anyway, and if I'm not going to be using the battery, it's a heavy lead cell battery, I could pull that out and save some weight, because this is over 100 pounds as it sits right now. So if I could, shave 2-3 pounds off there, that would be helpful. Before I started recording, I fired it up. It started on the second pull. So now that it's been warmed up, when I pull this cord this time, it's going to start on the first pull. When it starts, it's going to be running pretty rough. And then I'm going to rotate the knob from the start position to the run position, and you're going to hear the engine smooth out. Just like that, we're running. So letting it warm up for 2 to 3 minutes is what I generally do. Once it is warmed up, you take the ESC control and you turn that on, and right away you hear those RPMs drop, and that is the function of that ESC switch, which we're getting ready to talk about now. The primary role of the engine speed control, or ESC, is to help you save fuel. And the way it does that is by controlling the RPMs of the engine depending on the current draw that the generator senses. When I started it earlier and I turned that ESC on, the RPMs dropped. It was a really nice low idle, which was fine because we didn't have anything plugged into it. If we were to plug in a refrigerator, then the current draw would be sensed by the unit. This thing would understand that something was trying to pull current out, and it would automatically increase those RPMs to be able to provide the power needed by the refrigerator. When the refrigerator were to shut off, this would sense that the current request had stopped, and it would idle back down. This is a great way to save fuel, which is exactly what it's designed to do. This has a 2.3 gallon tank, which is rated at 11 hours at about 25% power consumption. I've never tested that. I've never run it out of fuel. I've always, topped it off periodically because I don't want to run out of gas when I'm depending on this to keep my food cold or whatever it is. But that's exactly what the ESC does. It's a great feature. Overall, I'm really pleased with this machine and how it's treated me so far. I do know that there are some concerns with Harbor Freight equipment and, some of the things you might buy from the store and if it's going to be reliable or what the quality is going to be like. Before I bought this, I did do a lot of research. I kind of wanted to make sure that I understood what other people's experiences were and read some of the specs and compared it to other brands and models out there before making the jump. I decided on this, and a few reasons were price. So one of the units I compared it against was the Honda, I think it's called the EU3000. The EU3000 creates less power than this, and it costs 3 times as much. It weighs 30% more. This is 102 or 103 pounds. The Honda's about 130 pounds, so that's crazy. And this has a 12-volt DC output. The Honda does not. So with all of those things being considered, I just couldn't justify buying the Honda simply because of the brand name. And I've had this for 4 to 5 years. It's worked solid. I've had 0 issues with it, no regrets. With that being said, I've used it for camping. My sister renewed her vows. The venue she rented for her ceremony was way out in the country. It was beautiful. They didn't have power to the facility. There was a small issue there. We were able to use this to power the lights, power the DJ equipment, some other small items. Worked great for that. Built a she shed for my wife in the woods, about 200 feet from the primary house. I would have had to have run 200 feet of extension cord to the she shed. Instead, I threw this in the wagon on a tractor, drug it out there, and fired it up, and I had my saw, I had my drill, I had lights, I had some music. Of course, you got to have music when you're doing stuff like that. And it worked flawlessly for that. And also, almost the most important thing has been the ability to run our refrigerator, the Wi-Fi, some lights when we lose power out here. We're out in the country a little bit, and when we lose power during a windstorm or an ice storm or whatever it is, this thing has saved the day. So again, no regrets, absolutely happy with the purchase, and I would recommend it. I'm not afraid to do that. But I would say, do your own research. Read the reviews, read the specs, kind of consider what it is you want to do with the thing, and get what you're comfortable with. So I'm getting ready to change the oil, and before doing that, I wanted to lift it up a little bit to give me some additional clearance to get my oil catch pan underneath the machine where it needs to be. So I just set it up on these 2x4s, and also for what it's worth, usually when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm doing it down on the ground at ground level. For the purposes of the video, I got it up in the air, setting it on this table just to give me better access and make it easier for you to see. But to get the oil changed, we need to remove this little cover, this little access cover, and that'll give you access to the oil fill plug as well as the oil drain plug. So, looking at the little door that I just pulled off, it looks like I've had a mouse or something else in there. I'm betting it was a mouse that chewed on the foam insulation on this little panel here. So that's concerning. I'm not happy that something's been in here. So I think what I'm going to do is, I believe I can pull this whole panel off. If I remove these two screws, I think this whole panel will just pop off. And if that's the case, that'll give me the opportunity to do a better inspection, make sure I don't have a mouse nest in there, or that maybe they didn't chew up something else. Maybe there's some damage. So I'm definitely going to want to look at that. And also, while I have the panel off, I'll just leave it off when I make the video. Honestly, it's going to make it easier to see that little oil fill plug as well as the oil drain plug anyway. So if there's a silver lining, I guess that's it. Once I got these two top screws out, these little push pins would go into these grommets here and hold it in place. So no big deal removing that. I got the panel off, and looking at it a little bit closer, this also has foam on it, probably for sound deadening. And I've got some more chew marks right along this edge here, so definitely had something in there. I used my flashlight. I got in here and I looked around a little bit, made sure there was no other damage and nothing else that was chewed on, no wires or hoses or anything like that. And also made sure there wasn't a nest or any kind of debris inside of here. There's not. We're good to move forward with the oil change. Even though it's up on these 2x4s, there's still not a lot of clearance. So I'm going to have to use this shallow pan to catch the oil that's going to come out of the engine. And it's not a very big pan, it doesn't have to be. This particular model only holds 20 ounces of oil. That's about 2/3 of a quart. That's not a lot of oil. This will be more than adequate. I'm going to use a 10mm socket to remove that drain plug, and when I do, the oil is going to run out from the bottom of the engine, and it's going to go down this little ramp, and that's going to guide it through the bottom of the machine down into that metal pan underneath. I'm going to remove the drain plug. And once I do that, I'm going to remove the cap, and that will allow the oil to flow a little bit better. Something else to help the oil flow is I ran it for just a couple minutes to warm up the oil a little bit to help it flow better. Looks like that oil is just about done running out, so I'm going to tip the machine up a little bit just to help get any of that extra oil out, get as much out as we can, so we can get as much fresh oil in as a single hold. That should do it. Get this all wiped up. This is the oil I just drained out of the bottom of the engine, and it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it is definitely a little bit darker than I would prefer. So I'm glad I'm changing it. I'm getting ready to put oil back in the machine, and one thing I just wanted to mention real quick was removing this panel was actually pretty easy. I just had these 2 screws. Once those were out, the thing popped right off. And I gotta say, that's a lot better access having this whole area open than trying to do everything through that little hole. You know, it's really easy to remove this panel. So I think moving forward, whenever I'm gonna change the oil, I'm just gonna remove this. With that also is the ability to get my funnel in here. So through this little access hole, if you're trying to get your funnel in, a normal funnel, even a long neck funnel, which is what I'm going to use, I'll show you here in a second, wouldn't do it. It would be at such an angle that the oil wouldn't travel down the funnel. It would just spill out onto the floor. So they include a special funnel with the machine when you first buy it. And it's a long, skinny funnel, but it also kicks up on the end. And that allows you to get oil in the machine without dumping it all over your floor. I have lost that magic little funnel. So it's going to be really convenient having this off, because now I'm going to get it at an angle where the oil will actually go into the machine and not all over my floor. Let it run for just 30 seconds or so to get that oil distributed in there. I'm going to go ahead and check the oil level one last time to make sure it's where it's supposed to be, which per the manual is going to be right at the threads. And I'll show you a little picture of that here so you can see what it is I'm talking about, because it's going to be nearly impossible for me to get a good shot of that by video. Oil level's right where it's supposed to be. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing buttoned up and put this panel back on. I think it's important to mention that I don't have a relationship with Harbor Freight or Predator. There's no affiliation at all. I just thought this would be a really good opportunity for me to talk about my experience with this thing over the past 4 going on 5 years and give you an unbiased opinion and review of what I thought. And overall, I'm really, really pleased with my decision to buy this unit. Now, I did talk about another unit, you know, the Honda. Okay, that's an option, and that's going to be similar to this. And to be honest, if the Honda had the same price tag as this and the specs were a little bit closer, I probably would have got the Honda. I mean, you know, it's a great company, but man, at a third the price, how could I not buy this? If it was junk, I would have spent the extra money on the Honda, but this isn't junk. It's performed really, really well. That's what I read in the reviews prior to making the decision to buy this, and it's proven to be true. So if you have an opinion on that, or you've got strong feelings about the Honda or whatever it is, if you want to leave that down in the comments, I would like to hear what you have to say about that. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. If you're not already a subscriber and you like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks again, be safe, enjoy the rest of your day.